And I cannot wait to get Michael Goodwin's take on this. Michael joins us now. Michael, with everything that you've seen, with all the crises that we had, including the 9/11 attacks here in New York City, how disturbed are you by the series of events since October 7th and beyond?
Well, good morning, Brian. Look, I think we're entering a new phase of world history. And I think a lot of the trends that we've seen and that you and I have discussed, the emergence of China, the brazen threats against the West, against Taiwan, the war in Ukraine, the invasion, trying to gobble up, Putin trying to recreate parts of the Soviet Union, Iran with its nuclear weapons push, with its terrorism around the region. I think these things are all coming to fruition. And it looks to me like the world, the axis of evil, the Russia, the China, the Iran, the North Korea, they're making a move. And it's not necessarily all coordinated, but I think it all stems from the same thing. They're feeling emboldened, and they look at America and feel that America is in decline, which most Americans agree with, and they fear that, or they feel that America is weak. And I think most Americans would probably agree with that we have put weakness front and center to the world. And so Israel, of course, being a vulnerable outpost of the West, if you want to see it in large, geostrategic terms, and I think Israel looks very vulnerable right now. I think the question of whether Hezbollah is going to open the second front, whether now is the time when Iran goes for the kill. And I think that's clearly what the Hamas attack signaled, that Israel looked weak. Israel was not ready. And I think when you display weakness, as Israel did by not seeing this plot, by not catching it and detecting it and being able to stop it, it emboldens your enemies. And so I think we're living in a very precarious time, Brian. It's not hard to imagine that we're in this early innings of new developments that really shake to the core everything we believe about our own country's strength and power and its place in the world.
A couple of things. Just to back up, the AP did a poll. 78% of our country say our nation is off course. And I think that's a correct statement, off course. Easy to put back. Because we have the wrong leadership making terrible choices. Who would ever think it's a good news to double our deficit by spending money we don't have on green projects that don't work? Who would ever think it's a good idea to open our borders and blame Congress when you know you did it yourself? Who would ever think it's a good idea to make the serving in the military so unpalatable? Even the families who traditionally have served are telling their next generation not to be in it. To me, and yet we still are growing. Yet we still have the biggest armed forces in the world. We still have the most talent. We still have the best track record. So I do think with the right leadership, it's easy to course correct and start redirecting our energy to use our own resources and start building some pride in our armed forces to prevent the next conflict. I do say this. I had General Spaulding on today, and he believes this is all coordinated. Hamas hitting, the Ukraine invasion, and he believes that China's next move either take Taiwan or tell North Korea to start blitzing South Korea because they want us strung out. Do you think they're that coordinated?
Well, I actually don't believe it's coordinated, but I think it is connected in the sense that they see each of these rogue nations sees the path forward, and that America is slow to react. I have to say, Brian, although Joe Biden gave that second speech he made on Israel, it was a good speech, except he left out Iran and the anti-Semitism at home, probably because he doesn't want to stir the Iran nest. He doesn't want to confront what what a failure his policy is, and the anti-Semitism is coming largely from the left, his own party, and so he's been slow to react to that. But then in subsequent days, he has said different things. For example, the idea that it would be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza, or that it has to be careful, not about civilians. All that's fine, except what are you really saying? What are you supporting? What's your policy? How far do you believe Israel can and should go? Because if Israel is successful in decapitating Hamas, then what? Does Israel just pull back again out of Gaza? Well, what happens in Gaza? I mean, there will be a new Hamas. There will be a new takeover. So
Absolutely.
This is the kind of things that are very complicated. And Joe Biden, he looks like he's half asleep all the time.
I mean, I'm watching him on Sunday. Do you know what Scott Pelley said leading up to that interview? The president had a busy day, and they told us when he gets tired, he goes back to his stuttering. Excuse me? You're making excuses for the president before their interview where you gave him a series of layups? What would you say to Iran if they told you that they were going to attack Israel? Don't. Wow. Let's send that clip out and make the president look tough. Why don't you just add kettle drums and make him sound like he's the next incarnation of FDR?
Well,
To me,
it's funny you mention that because I had the same reaction, or similar, I should say, in the sense that Scott Pelley seemed to be asking him just yes or no questions. They were, do you believe it's wrong for blah, blah, blah? Yes. Do you believe it's right for blah, 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 blah? No. I mean,
What the
kind
hell?
of interview was that?
It was crazy.
You're supposed to bring out his thinking, not just sort of bake him a cake and ask him if he likes it or not.
And what about this? I want you to hear this clip, and I'm not going to lead the witness. I want you to hear this. Cut 4.
Given these two wars and the dysfunction in Congress, are you sure that you want to run again?
Yes, because I'm sure. Look, when I ran, I said the world's at an inflection point. The world's changing, but we have an opportunity to make it. So imagine if we were able to succeed in getting the Middle East put in place where we have normalization of relations. I think we can do that.
So I just wanted you to let that ruminate for a second. Can you bring me through the question and the answer?
Well, I mean, it's sort of he cannot finish a complete sentence, so he switches midstream, and then he always reflects back to the past. Right, when I decided to run, it was because, I mean, in other words, it's a hodgepodge, and there's never a complete thought in it. There's never a real answer. He's not functioning like an adult who has had all these experiences and draws on them. He cannot communicate the basic things, and I think it's very disheartening for America. I mean, where are we going? This guy's. Would you let him fly a plane? We're on this great plane of America. Can he really be the pilot?
So,
I mean,
the question
silly.
was, is the world worthy of you serving another 4 years? How about this, Mr. President? You're 80 years old, or 82. You'll be 86 by the end. With these crises and the need for maybe 20-hour workdays, you couldn't handle a 3-hour workday. You needed a precursor to say you might start stuttering again. I mean, not to bring up age with that question, number one. Number two is he's the one who screwed up what was coming in to a series of alliances called the Abraham Accords. He's the one who made Saudi Arabia a pariah nation, stopping the Abraham Accords. He's the one who took the Houthi rebels off the terror list who were lobbing rockets into Saudi Arabia and backing up Iran to get him back into this deal, screwing up the Abraham Accords. It was only after 2.5 years and a reapproachment and a realignment because they had no choice that they went back to Saudi Arabia that they were considering doing that. Do you know you could not mention the Abraham Accords in the White House? And now this guy thinks he's going to be the author of a realignment of the Middle East when it was handed to him?
Well, you're right that the White House wouldn't even use the words Abraham Accords, and neither would the State Department. Look, Brian, I think if there's one key to all of this failure, it is the Democrats, starting with Obama and then Biden, treatment of Iran. They have enriched Iran. They have effectively dismantled the sanctions, and Iran is now a richer country. But all of that money, or most of that money, whether it's lifting of sanctions or unfreezing cash, all of that money has gone not to help the people of Iran. It's gone to fund Hezbollah, to fund Hamas.
Of course.
I mean, to fund the Houthis that were attacking Saudi Arabia. That is what Iran is. You know, Henry Kissinger said many years ago, Iran has to decide if it's a country or a cause. And I think we can safely say Iran is still a cause. It is still a revolutionary cause throughout the region and throughout the world. But Joe Biden doesn't even see it that way. He doesn't see what's happening. He keeps acting as if, as did Obama, we can sweet talk them. We can just bring them into the fold, and they'll see the advantages of being part of the international rules-based system. They talk as though that there is some magic to this. These people only understand force.
That's it.
They are about killing and destroying. You cannot sweet talk them, as frankly Israel learned with Hamas.
So what I'm worried about, Michael, I'm worried about that delay over the weekend wasn't weather-related. I'm worried that they were already trying to tie the hands of Israel. Are you?
You mean the delay in
the delay in the fight and the invasion? I fear that we're already trying to tie their hands because of the humanitarian casualties or the civilian casualties that could take place.
I have a somewhat different view. I think you're right. Biden is trying to tie Israel's hands and limit what they can do. But I do think that Israel needs to be very careful of course, in terms of civilian casualties, but it's sort of what happens next. If you go in there heavy, you may or may not get the hostages. You will certainly lose some of your own soldiers. It will be a very destructive act. But even if you succeed, then what? What do you do? And I think that is a problem. I'm not sure Israel has the answer to that because it pulled out of Gaza in 2005, 2006, and wanted nothing to do with it, would love to have a peaceful relationship with Gaza. But the problem is Gaza became the home of Hamas. Hamas runs Gaza. Everything about Gaza is controlled by Hamas. That's one of the reasons why I think Israel did not have good intelligence. I think it has no human intelligence in Gaza anymore. I think they've all been killed. I think anyone who showed any sympathy to Israel, any kind of affiliation, was killed. So I think if Israel is going to take over Gaza, it's going to inherit a 2 million population, and it's going to have to provide services while protecting against the emergence of a new Hamas. So I think it's a very tricky situation. You know, even if Israel succeeds, then what?
So, yeah, I think that they killed about 5 or 6 commanders already, so they had somewhat intelligence.
Right.
Here's an example of why I can't wait for the Biden administration to be voted right out. They have just agreed to ease sanctions on Venezuela in exchange for freer elections. On their oil industry, the dirtiest oil in the world, they're going to be able to sell it freely and maybe starting to bulk up their economy and put them more in power as long as they promise more free elections. So, again, breaking friends with our enemies and thinking they're going to win them over. Why? Because he's not pumping oil, but he wants to buy it from them.
And
Amazing.
How many Venezuelans have come across our southern border? I mean, 1 million? 800,000?
And they get to stay now.
Yeah. I mean, none of this makes sense, right? These two things are at odds with each other, and yet that's the policy. It's sort of ad hoc. I mean, Jake Sullivan is terrible. I mean, he's just wrong about everything. He talks about, the Mideast has never been so calm.
Well, the only thing, remember, we should have known what to expect. He was working against the Trump administration, pushing that old Russian narrative.
Yeah.
Michael Goodwin will have to end it there.
National Security Advisor.
Right. Thanks so much. Back with your calls in just a moment.